Okay, friends, Jonah chapter 4. This is our last day in Jonah, and you can see that I'm in a different spot than I normally am. Many of you have asked me, how is it that you're able to keep your house quiet while you film these online Bible studies? The secret is simple. I get up before the kids get up. But this morning, that didn't happen, so I have been relegated to the front yard. So, the front yard, we're going to talk about Jonah chapter 4. Now, here's the thing. If you are only familiar with Jonah from the children's version of Jonah, then you're probably not familiar with Jonah chapter 4. And some people get upset with the children's Bibles for not including it. But here's the thing. I don't think most kids are ready for this. This is big boy, big girl stuff here. I mean, the question that lands in our lap at the end of this is it's a good question, but it is a hard question for us to ask. And lots of weird stuff happens in Jonah chapter 4 before you get to that question. So this may be new for you. And as I read through it, and I think the best way to get after this is just simply to read through it and reflect on it. As we get after this together, be thinking about, okay, what's a major theme here? A theme in chapter 4 that ties into a theme in the book of Jonah as a whole. So as I'm reading through this, be thinking about how the Lord is kind of speaking to you this morning, and then I'll reflect on it a bit, and I'll reflect as we go also. So Jonah chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. It displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry. Okay, what is Jonah displeased about? What is he angry about? Well, he's angry about what happened in the previous verse. We talked about it yesterday. Jonah chapter 3, verse 10. When God saw what they did, that's the Ninevites repented, how they turned from their evil way, God relented of the disaster that he said that he would do to them, and he didn't do it. So what happens? God saves the people. Hey, Jonah's prophetic message, his prophetic journey is a success. He speaks this word to the people, and they are saved from the disaster that was about to fall upon them. How does Jonah feel about that? He is exceedingly displeased, and he is angry that the Ninevites have been saved. And he prayed to the Lord, and this is what he said, "O Lord, is this not what I said when I was yet in my country?" So obviously there's more of a conversation that we didn't get in chapter 1. There's more of a conversation at the very beginning of this. We just know that Jonah gets up and he doesn't go to Nineveh. But obviously he said to God from the very, very beginning, look, here's the deal. If I go, I'm afraid that you're going to save those people. Because here's what I know about you. That's why I made haste to flee to Tarshish. Because here's what I know about you, God. I know that you're a gracious God and you're merciful. You're slow to anger and you're abounding in steadfast love. And you're relenting from disaster. I know that you're merciful and that you're slow to anger and all these things, all these great qualities about God, that Jonah is actually angry that God is this way. What does Jonah want to see? He wants to see Nineveh burned down. And if you're not sure why he has such just animosity towards the Ninevites, go back earlier this week and you'll see, Nineveh is the capital of Assyria. These are not good people. Jonah has reasons to be concerned about these people, but he clearly has such concerns about them that he doesn't even want them to be saved. And when they are, he's angry. So therefore, now, O Lord, please take my life from me. It's better for me to die than to live. He says, I am so angry that I don't even want to be alive anymore. And then God poses a question to him. It's the first of 3 questions that he's going to pose that really tie together this theme. Do you do well to be angry? Jonah, let's just reflect on this for a second. Is it good for you to be angry? Here, is it right for you to be angry? Is it right for you to be angry about me saving these people? And Jonah doesn't even answer. Jonah just turns around and he walks away. Jonah went out of the city and sat to the east of the city, and he made a booth or a tent for himself there. He sat under it in the shade because it's hot, so that he could see what would become of the city. He's staying out there just in case God changes his mind again. Now, the Lord appointed a plant. What appointed here is the same thing that he does with a fish. So he sends a fish to save Jonah at the end of chapter 1, and now he sends a plant. And he sends him the plant, and he made it come up over Jonah so that there might be shade over Jonah's head to save him from his discomfort. So Jonah was now exceedingly glad because of the plant. So it begins with him being exceedingly displeased because God is merciful. And now he is exceedingly happy because he gets a plant. He gets some shade. But when dawn came the next day, God appointed a worm to attack the plant so that it withered. I'm telling you, Jonah chapter 4 is nutso, right? I mean, the point of it is so brilliant. It's so good, but it is so weird also. And when the sun rose, God appointed a scorching east wind. And the sun beat down on the head of Jonah so that Jonah was faint. So he gets a shade, and then the shade goes away, and now it's really, really hot. And he asked God again that he might die. And he said, "It is better for me to die than to live." But God said to Jonah, "Do you do well to be angry?" Same question as before, but now he adds more. "Do you do well to be angry for the plant?" Jonah, is this good for you to be angry about the plant? Is it right for you to be angry about the plant? And Jonah said, "Yes, I do well to be angry." And then he doubles down. Angry enough to die. Yes, I am so grieved over this plant, and not to mention everything else that you've done, that I am so grieved that yes, I could just die. And yeah, I do well to be angry, that angry. This is what concludes the whole thing. Oh, it is so good. This is what concludes the whole thing. Jonah, you pity the plant. Now, let's just talk about your plant for a second. You pity the plant for which you didn't labor. You didn't plant the plant, and which you didn't make grow. You didn't do anything to get this plant, and which came into being in a night, and which perished in a night, which you didn't do anything to make grow, and which you had for less than 24 hours. Okay? You're so grieved over this plant. And then he poses one last question. And in fact, it's not really even a question in Hebrew, it's a statement. And you're telling me, Jonah, that I shouldn't pity Nineveh, the great city, in which there are more than 120,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left hand, and also many cattle? Charlie, you want to come in for the last little bit? Okay, all right, I'm being inside in just a second. So you're telling me, Jonah, that you're so upset about this plant, and you're saying that I shouldn't care about these people and all the animals? And again, we translate it as a question because it makes more sense, but really it's a statement. He's saying, Jonah, that's what you think? This is the third time that he's done something like this with Jonah. We said, Jonah, are you sure that the way that you're thinking about the world is right? Are you sure about this? And Jonah doesn't respond. It's the end of the book. A question is left lingering out there for Jonah. And if we take this seriously, it's a question that's left lingering out there for us. Do you see the overarching theme here? It begins right in the first 3 verses of Jonah and carries all the way right to the end of chapter 4. Jonah begins with there being a disagreement between Jonah and between God about how Jonah should spend the next few months of his life. God says, go east, and Jonah says, I don't think so. I'm going to go west. There's a disagreement about what Jonah should do with his life. And then in chapter 4, there's a disagreement about what God should do with all of these people. And Jonah's angry. Like, I just knew that you were going to get this wrong. I just knew that you're all of these things. I just knew that. And I'm not happy about that. And then there's a disagreement about the plant and how God treated, let's not move that, buddy, and how God treated Jonah's little plant. There's disagreements about that. And over and over again, what you see here is that God and Jonah have a different vision for how the world should be run. They have a different vision for Jonah's life and for how God should treat other people. They have a different vision for it. And over again, God looks at Jonah and says, Jonah, do you really think you're right here? And do you really think that you've got all of this figured out? And I think over and over again, what the Bible pushes us to do in Jonah chapter 4, more than almost anywhere else, it pushes us to say, are you really sure that you know how best to run this whole deal? Or are you really sure that you know best how to run the world, how to even run your life? And what Jonah is pushed towards over and over again, it's the same thing that we're pushed towards over and over again, is the question of who really knows best? Who really knows best about how you should spend the next 2 to 3 months of your life? Who really knows best about how God should treat other people? Who really knows best about how the world should be run. What we see here is that God is actually far more merciful. God is far more forgiving than Jonah thinks that he should be. Oftentimes, God surprises us, and God surprises us with his mercy and his forgiveness and his goodness. And the reality is that sometimes we have concerns about that. But sometimes we have concerns about other things that it seems that God is up to. And what Jonah leaves us with is the question that we have to face. Do we really think that we're more fit to run this whole deal than he is? Jonah is the story of a man who thinks, who's just convinced that he knows better than God how to run his life, and he knows better than God how to run the world. And he's left in a miserable place because he holds on to that. But the hope and the prayer for Jonah, obviously, is that last little bit got him. That he said, okay, maybe you know better than I do. And the hope for us is that we get to that same place where we realize that we do have a God who is slow to anger, who is merciful, who is just, who is good, and that we can trust him. We can trust that he knows better than we do how we should spend the next few months of our lives, and that he knows better than we do how to run this world, and that we are at our best when we're trusting him and that we're following after him. This is the story of the book of Jonah. God bless you, friends.